Welcome to This Week in Wrestling History.
All right, everyone, welcome to On the House, the only podcast dedicated to getting free things from stores and talking about Full House. As always, we're your hosts.
I was trying to see how long you would take that one.
Yeah, that was about as far as I can get. All right, This Week in Wrestling History, Ryan, Jacob. You guys know the shtick by now. Social media, This Week in Wrestling History, email, Wrestling History Podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Anyways, moving on. I don't feel like doing plugs this week.
Cool.
All right, so this week we're actually going back to an older show from...
Not as old as some of the stuff we've done.
Right, but it's almost 15 years old at this point. It's 14. It's 2005. That's 14 years ago.
Yeah.
You're old.
Yeah, wow. Okay. Because I remember watching this one live.
Welcome to my my world now.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so today we're going to be going over WWE One Night Stand. Technically,
Nope.
ECW One Night Stand from 2005. It was weird because they hadn't brought ECW back as a brand yet.
Right. It was after the next One Night Stand that they did that.
Right. So
within a year.
Right, but still, it was plugged as the ECW, but it was still wholly under the WWE banner. But
Yeah.
anyways, before we get into that, let's actually cover the event that happened for us yesterday, for everyone listening a couple days ago.
Yep. So that was the WWE Super Showdown, which I never realized it. The name is kind of funny because they had a Super Showdown already. That was the one that was in Australia.
Yep.
But the hyphen was between show and down, and this one didn't have a hyphen.
Ooh.
So they're two different pay-per-views.
Okay, hyphenless, nice.
Right.
So, right off the bat, I've read some results. I didn't watch this thing. Me personally, I don't want to support them doing this stuff. I don't think it's good for business. I don't think it's good for all sorts of different political reasons that we don't need to get into it all today. But I didn't watch it. You watched it.
I watched up until the promo for the Kofi and Dolph match.
And I think from everything I was reading, I by far got the better end of this deal.
You did. However, if anybody's going to watch any of these matches, Finn Balor and Andrade is the best match of the night.
Yeah, that kind of goes without saying, so that's cool. All right, let's run it down real super quick. For the ones you watched, you can give an opinion, and then I can tell you what I've read about or heard. So, first match of the evening wasn't even shown. It was the Usos going over the Revival in a non-title match because neither of those teams hold the Raw titles.
They don't, though.
No. What? Why not have the Raw Tag Team Champions? I don't think have been seen since they won the belts. Maybe the week after.
True. They've popped up a couple of times on Raw, but they haven't been on a pay-per-view.
Nope.
I did see this match. It was actually very good.
Okay. I would expect that these two teams, that makes total sense.
It was very good. The only thing that kind of gets me whenever they do a show in Saudi Arabia, there's no marks there. So it was cheers for the Usos because they're the good guys, and it was boo for the Revival because they're the bad guys.
Well, I mean, that's actually kind of got to be a pro for WWE going over there is easy crowd to work with, no smart fans.
Yeah, I mean, there was literally no marks at all.
Right. Well, I mean,
soon as
there may have been like maybe a dozen, but they're going to get drowned out by the vast size of that crowd, so it doesn't matter.
As soon as the Revival's music hit, a ton of boos. And I was like, what? How is this a thing?
Right, they're the heels. But that's kind of good, so.
It was a good match. It was entertaining.
Right.
Probably second best match on the card.
All right. Next up, we had our champions, WWE Universal Champion Seth Rollins versus Baron Corbin.
So, Seth can carry people through matches.
Yep.
This was, I think, one of the only times I don't think he needed to carry Corbin.
So, the internet disagrees with you. Dave Meltzer of the famous Meltzer star rating scale, his comment on this match was, it takes a very special talent to cause Seth Rollins to have less than a 3-star match.
I don't know if that was Corbin's fault or if that was booking's fault.
That was Corbin's fault.
It didn't seem like it to me when I was actually watching the match. But
if you say so, like I said, I didn't watch it, so.
So my one big thing with it was, and this is a theme throughout the night, everybody was a little slow.
Well, it was like a bajillion degrees, and
it's 92 degrees at 9 o'clock at night, and you're outside.
Yep.
On top of that, Corbin's wrestling in a dress shirt, a vest, and jeans.
Suit pants.
Jeans this time.
Ooh.
I can't blame the guy for moving a little slower.
Yeah, I don't know if you can necessarily even like prepare for it because they don't have a ton of time to prepare because they were doing shows in the U.S. Monday and Tuesday for Raw and SmackDown.
They get there, they have to adjust to the
time change
and then go out and wrestle.
Yeah, and I'm sure they have a ton of press to do. So,
I mean, I still think Seth didn't have to carry Corbin. Corbin made do with what booking had him do with the Seth back injury kind of thing. That shtick is starting to get old in matches. So
we end with Seth rolls up Baron, then Brock comes out with the Brock box, or the Beast box. Sorry,
Brock Party.
Doesn't cash in. Fakes like he was going to. Seth gets the upper hand on him with a chair and then stomps him into the briefcase.
The stomping in the briefcase was a cool spot.
Yeah, I actually saw a little bit of this on a recap thingy. So it's weird that you would go all... The theory here is now that Brock privately flew to Saudi Arabia to fail, to not even cash in.
Yeah, and what's even better is he just made like a cool $5 million off of this.
Yeah. All right, next up was your match of the evening. Finn Balor, our IC champ, versus Andrade.
At this point, this match should be a WrestleMania match.
So, little tangent from this. We talked about this online a little bit. We were chatting. I think the Demon needs to be defeated sooner rather than later.
And I agreed with that, but not with Andrade.
I think Andrade, I think he would benefit from it more than most people. I don't want to see someone already I don't want to see John Cena beat the Demon.
No, I would prefer to see Seth beat the Demon. Or DB beat the Demon. Or my shoe-in pick for it would be Bray Wyatt.
Bray would be good. That I'd be happy with. I really think you want like one of your upper mid-carders to kind of use that as their breakthrough moment, kind of into the championship picture. Almost kind of like winning Money in the Bank can be a promotion from mid-card to main event.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think that's a big enough attraction that I want it done just mostly because I don't, oddly enough, I don't want the Demon gimmick to become stale as in he's the Demon, he's going to win.
Right.
I want it to at least have and I want to kind of get that one loss out of the way as opposed to, he's, WWE champ and now he's the Demon and loses to whatever challenger. So I'd rather get that out of the way now than later.
If Samoa Joe was still on SmackDown, I would say Joe would be the one to do it.
It could be doable.
But anyway,
all right.
Best match of the night.
All right. Next up, Shane versus Reign.
It was poop. It will always be poop whenever Shane is in the ring. That's all I have to say.
So the one thing I heard about having Shane win and why Shane might be our next WWE champion.
Boo.
Well, who's one of the only guys you can absolutely assure will not leave and go to AEW?
Fair point.
You got to put the belt on Shane. He's not going to leave us.
Fair point.
He's not going to complain.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, at this point,
no, honestly, this is an awful idea. Shane needs. We need to be done with this.
Shane needs to retire the little shuffle.
It's Shane versus Angle at King of the Ring 2000, I think it was.
Fantastic.
One of my all-time favorite matches and literally had me like cringing on how brutal it was. Used to love Shane. Now we need to stop.
Yep.
There's no point for him to be around.
Let the guy retire.
All right, next up, Lars Sullivan versus the Lucha House Party by DQ.
Super dumb. It was the Lucha House Party tagging quick, trying to beat up Lars. One of them getting tossed out of the ring, the other two coming back in and beating him up and getting DQ'd.
That's super dumb, especially because it's a handicap match, so moving on. Next we had, by far the longest match of the evening, sans the Rumble, was Randy Orton going over Triple H.
Not awful, but not as good as Batista and Trips at Mania.
Might have been because they were in 90-degree heat.
I would assume so, yes.
All right. Next up, the match no one ever wanted, Braun Strowman versus Bobby Lashley.
Woo.
Whatever. What's Braun was like the hottest thing in the company last year.
Yeah, and then
they cooled him right off.
He had that shoulder injury.
Yeah, but even beyond that, they cool him super quick. Like, he won the tag belts essentially by himself with an 11-year-old at Mania last year, and then nothing.
Like, it just dumbfounds me because he can go.
Yeah.
Especially if you were to put him in with a guy like, I don't know, Finn Balor.
Oh, and his feud with Owens ended up going so poorly for both of them too.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
And it's
real,
one of those things.
Bad booking. It's
like,
good shit.
You
just read it, pal.
You have somebody like Seth with the title who's kind of got this ongoing thing with Brock. You need to move Braun off of Raw to get him away from that.
Right.
Give me Kofi versus Braun for the title.
If you have Brock being your monster, then Braun doesn't really have room to do anything.
No.
Nor does Lashley even. Hell.
On SmackDown right now, who's the big monster?
Lars.
But he's showing up on Raw too. We don't know where he actually is.
And not to mention he's awful.
So, honestly, there is no giant monster on SmackDown.
Yeah. They could
put Braun on there.
Yeah.
Roman's the biggest guy on SmackDown.
Yeah. Put Braun over there and make him a heel. It's fine. All right, moving on. So from here on out, I don't think you saw these. Next up was Kofi Kingston going over Dolph Ziggler.
I did not see it. I heard it was pretty good, but, I mean, these guys have worked each other
right, these guys have danced
times.
So many times together. And they're going to do it again next month in the next pay-per-view, so whatever. That's the weirdest thing about these Saudi Arabia shows. They don't count.
No, there's no story to it. They're literally just there to get a paycheck.
Yeah, it's a payday, and they always end up weird. All right, the 51-man Battle Royal was won by Mansoor, eliminating Elias.
Cool.
Whatever. And then was our depressing bout of the evening was the Undertaker defeating Goldberg, kind of. This thing was a hot mess.
Goldberg was defeated after he made his entrance.
So, if anyone hasn't seen this, we all know Goldberg's entrance where it starts off backstage, him coming out of the dressing room escorted by security like an MMA entrance. But Goldberg has this ritual of headbutting his locker room door before walking out. So he opens his locker room door and you see a big red mark on his forehead where he's started to bust himself open.
And what's even better, he's glassy-eyed already.
So he essentially gave himself a concussion before he walked out. There was a really awkward minute and a half of his entrance where he did his walk backstage, hit the area where he's about to come out of the curtain, and nothing. And nothing for a minute and a half. Because apparently what was happening was a doctor in the gorilla position, which is the little area backstage right before you come out the curtain, was giving him a neural exam, checking him for a concussion.
Yeah, because,
that's not good.
Especially because if somebody can tell that you're concussed just from watching you walk to the gorilla position, come on.
Right. So now we have a guy who, I will say this, Goldberg's last run last year, for what it was decent.
Yeah, I mean...
It was brief. It hid any of his real major...
It was good storytelling.
Yeah. It protected him. They did the right thing. It was fine. I've never been a Goldberg fan, but it was fine. So now we're a year after that. We now have a possible concussion. We're in 90-degree heat, and we're working Undertaker, who I will just flat out say he no longer has it. He needs to stop. It's bad.
Let's be real. You wouldn't have it at 55 and 92-degree weather either.
Probably not. But he didn't have it at Mania last year against Reigns either.
No.
They flubbed that whole thing too. So the biggest takeaway from this was the end of the whole thing was completely botched. And Undertaker went for a tombstone on Goldberg, but couldn't get him up and basically dropped him almost on his neck. And then eventually they kind of squirm around a little bit, and Undertaker hits a choke slam that didn't work at all either, and that was the end. And he was sitting there looking like, well, that was pathetic.
Yeah.
Because it was.
Yeah. No amount of money from Saudi Arabia could ever make me want to watch this match.
It was so very bad. The only thing it did was serve to tarnish both of their reputations. That's all it did.
Yeah.
All right. So, anyways,
on to the main event.
Speaking of tarnishing a reputation, ECW One Night Stand from 2005. So this was the first time they brought back ECW
since what, 2001?
Since they went out in 2001, yes. Since
it was I should say, an ECW branded, quote branded pay-per-view. They had the whole thing with the invasion, but that really wasn't anything.
Right. There was no ECW event, and it was a bastardized version of ECW at that point anyways. So
yeah, this was honestly meant solely for a tribute to the ECW fans.
Exactly. It was basically a thank you to the fans and to give ECW kind of a final proper send-off, because it never really got a, hey, this is our last event. It just kind of closed in the middle of the night one day.
I remember watching this live, and I honestly loved just about every single match on the card.
So I liked some of it. I think I liked it more back in the day. There's a distinct point in this event where things start going downhill for me, and I'll point it out when we get to it.
I would assume it's when the WWE stuff starts to happen.
That's exactly when this whole shit show starts. Well, when this show starts going into a shit show.
I mean, considering that your opening match is Chris Jericho versus
Lionheart Chris Jericho,
right, versus Lance freaking Storm.
Yeah. So this was super good. They did a great job at kind of even covering the career trajectories of both men, talking about how they started in the business together, that this was essentially Lance Storm's retirement match. And
it was his send-off.
And in not so many ways, it really was his retirement match. He did have some quote-unquote official retirement matches in ROH about 4 to 5 years ago.
Yeah, and he had a couple of indie matches too.
Yeah, but largely this was his last major match, and ends up with him winning when Just Incredible comes out and canes Jericho in the head. I mean, it's Lance Storm and Chris Jericho when Jericho was in his prime. Yeah. It was good.
Like, don't get me wrong, Jericho can still go now.
It's a different Jericho, though.
Yes, it's a very different Jericho. This is heyday Jericho.
Currently we have Dad Bod Chris Jericho, which I'm no one to talk about that, but
I mean, I
haven't been on TV for the last 20 years either, so I don't have much to compare to.
This was Jericho shortly after coming over to...
No. Jericho came over in 99. This was 2005. This is 6 years later.
6 years later? That's still...
That's a long time, buddy.
I mean, that's... To the fans, that's nothing. Because at this point, I didn't watch when Jericho first came over, but I remember reading stuff about people saying how it was fresh in their minds, then all of a sudden we get the change back to Lionheart Jericho. It was one of those things where it was unexpected, and it was still close enough to him showing up and doing a few things that it was a big deal.
So, funny thing was, this was actually pretty close to Jericho's first time leaving the WWE.
Yeah.
So, by the end of the year, I believe, he would actually be taking his first break from WWE.
And I'm pretty sure this is when we hit the startup of Fozzy, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that is correct. I think that's why he took his break.
Because he doesn't do any wrestling stuff at this point. Because, I mean, honestly, his break away to go to some other company, the first time that happened was going to New Japan.
Right. So, yep, this is when he went and started. So this was when Fozzy was a gimmick band. Do you remember the gimmick of Fozzy?
Yeah.
Fozzy Osbourne.
Yep.
And he was Moon Goose McQueen.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a band that had been stuck in Japan for the last 20 years because of visa problems.
Yep.
And therefore, none of their music had ever been released until today. And
which, I mean, a band is always big in Japan.
It was funny-ish for like 20 seconds. And then it was like, it was dumb because... And Jericho used to do these awful these awful interviews as Moon Goose McQueen.
Yep.
And talk about, who's this Chris Jericho guy? And it's like, okay, it was funny once, but you need to drop this shtick. It's awful. And then they would they would drop the Osbourne part off Fozzy and become a much more serious band and apparently do okay.
I mean, if Jericho were to never wrestle again, he'd still be okay with doing just Fozzy.
Yeah. So, again, Lance Storm, end of his time there. Jericho, near the end of his first run there. So, that was kind of cool. Really good match, as Lance Storm's always been one of my favorites ever since I was a big fan of Lance Storm back when he was in ECW proper.
I mean, Lance Storm is... I would probably say technique-wise on the level of Bret.
I was about to say he's Bret Hart level, like technically sound, yes.
Because all of his moves are so crisp. Everything looks perfect.
Everything looks like he's in there slaughtering someone when he's not.
Yeah. I mean, even him hitting, like more recently when he showed up in Impact to be the special guest referee. Dude can still hit a super kick like it's nothing.
Yeah, he's always been one of the best super kicks in the business. So, all right. Next up, we had a three-way dance, which in ECW, and I always preferred ECW's rules to this as opposed to everyone else's. When they have a 3 or 4-way match, it's not just whoever gets that first pinfall.
It keeps going.
Yeah, it's whoever loses that first pinfall, you're eliminated, and now we're down to the last two guys, and they just keep going at it, which... That makes so much more sense in wrestling because now you don't have to worry about guy A trying to break up a pin between guy B and C, which is a little weird, but...
I mean, think about it like this. Becky, Ronda, and Charlotte at Mania for both belts.
Yep.
Tell me that those rules would not have been so much better for that match.
Right. And here's the super cool thing that happens when you do it that way. Do a 3-way match for the championship. Eliminate the champion first. Now the crowd gets super invested because, holy shit, we're going to have a new champ. I don't know what's going to happen now.
We're guaranteed a new champ.
Exactly. That brings that. I saw it in ECW so many times where it brought the crowd. ECW crowds were always hot, but it turned the volume up on things so much and it was a great little twist to things. And I really liked it. It made it just in wrestling. It made more sense to me.
Yeah.
So anyways,
who is in this match?
3-way dance. It's Super Crazy, Little Guido, and Tajiri.
But this was when he was Yoshihiro Tajiri.
Right. So we weren't goofy Tajiri. We were Japanese buzzsaw Tajiri.
Can I just tell you? I always forget how actually decent Little Guido is.
Yeah, he was actually noted to be technically one of the best wrestlers in ECW. And these three guys would, near the end of ECW's time, you could basically take it was kind of like the Usos, the New Day, and the Bar.
take any three of them, put them in a match.
Exactly. Take any combination of the three, throw them in a match. You're going to get a good match.
Yeah.
And ECW, kind of in their final year, relied on that a lot on their TV shows. The combination of these three guys was heavily featured, and they always brought it to the table, and they always delivered.
Well, and it was always fun because it was such a difference in styles.
Right. They had three different styles, but they all meshed really well. Like Tajiri was more of the Japanese style, Super Crazy more of the Lucha style, Little Guido more of the grappler style.
Yeah, and they all worked really well.
Right. And they all had giant crazy things they could do that were super impressive that the crowd loved, and it was really good.
Honestly, and the other one too, I always forget. Super Crazy's moonsaults.
Oh,
they're pretty good looking moonsaults.
It is a good looking moonsault. So Little Guido gets eliminated first because the FBI was out, which the FBI was hilarious, honestly.
They were.
Because there was one Italian guy, and then, so FBI stood for full-blooded Italians. There was one Italian guy, and then a ton of clearly non-Italian guys. And that was just the whole gimmick. It was pretty entertaining. So FBI comes in, all these shenanigans, and then Tajiri and Super Crazy end up kind of joining forces, taking out the FBI, eliminating Little Guido, coming down to just Super Crazy and Tajiri.
I'm glad we got to see The Mist, and we got to see The Mist legitimately work.
Oh, yeah.
In this match.
Yeah, this was pretty prime Tajiri, and yep, Super Crazy ends up winning with hitting a great-looking moonsault. I mean, so Tajiri would, I think, leave WWE again shortly after this. Super Crazy was never really with... Oh, no, he was with...
He came in
the
with,
Mexicools. Yeah, this was actually the start of the Mexicools.
Yep, because Psychosis and Juventud.
Oh, yeah, Juvi. Ugh, that was awful.
The gimmick was awful.
The gimmick was awful, yes. Those three guys could go.
They put on some really good matches.
Yeah, and Little Guido was also with WWE for a short time around this. Never really did much, but he was around.
Yeah,
right.
he came back when they rebooted ECW.
Yeah. Next up was Rey Mysterio versus Psychosis.
All day, every day, please give me...
Yeah, this is just... So all these matches were relatively short. They all went about 2.5 minutes for the most part. It was basically a quick little match, but it was primo Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, and again, you said it was Psychosis, right?
Yep.
Psychosis, he's getting a little bit older at this point. Dude could still move, though.
Oh, yeah. He still hit the guillotine leg drop off the top rope to the floor.
Yeah.
So
and it's one of those things where this match, seeing this for the first time when I'm watching it live, made me go, okay, I need to go find some stuff to watch this when they were at each other's throats in WCW.
Seeing this makes sense on why WCW rated these guys. And yeah, why they became kind of like that featured first act for Nitro for so long. All right, it was after this match that things start going off the tracks a little bit because now we bring the WWE angles into things, and basically there was a coalition of heels from SmackDown and Raw that, we don't want ECW back. We're going to crap on this whole thing. Led by JBL and Bischoff. And,
yeah, it was, cool for the story stuff, but this is an ECW pay-per-view. Just let it be an ECW pay-per-view.
Right. It ends up kind of overshadowing the show, both figuratively and literally, as they sit up in the balcony. And, yeah, it changes the feel of the show.
Yeah. It then makes it it's a WWE pay-per-view.
Yeah. It's like WWE had to have their stink all over it.
Yep.
So next up we had Sabu versus Rhino.
It was an okay match.
It was fine. Sabu is always the human high spot machine, which is he does something crazy.
He jumps up.
Half botches it, half hits it, kills himself for 20 minutes as he lays there.
Yeah. It's one of those things where he's... I don't know.
It's fine in moderation. Honestly, I think it's better in tag matches when there's other people that cover for him.
Yeah.
In singles matches, it always,
And honestly, this should have been the end of Sabu. Like,
it should have been,
He
but
should have
he would come back for WWE ECW as well.
well, and that's what I mean. Like, that should have been the end of it.
Yeah.
Because when I get Sabu and RVD in Impact Wrestling, and Sabu can't manage to hit a single spot, let alone any of his high spots,
Yeah.
guy should have been
Not
done.
good. Yep. All right. Next up, admittedly, I did not watch this match. It was Benoit versus Guerrero. You said it was great. I'm just kind of at a point where I don't really feel like watching these matches anymore, just because.
Chris Benoit.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever we talk about it, we always have to spend a minute and a half explaining. Yes, we understand, and I'm just getting tired of it. So,
aside from the stuff with Benoit, one of my favorite matches ever.
Right. Unfortunately, within the next year, Eddie would pass away. So,
Which,
if for no other reason to watch this than to remember Eddie and a great match he had with some of the limited time he would unfortunately have left.
Eddie, at this point, was my favorite wrestler when I was watching. And I think that's the first time that I ever legitimately got upset at a celebrity passing away.
That's fair. All right. Up after this, now here was a hell of a match. Mike Awesome versus Masato Tanaka.
Best match on the card.
Yep. So Awesome had been with the company, had left the company in 2002, and then came back for this match. And if you'd never seen Mike Awesome versus Masato Tanaka, you're in for a treat. If you've seen Mike Awesome versus Masato Tanaka, you know what to expect by now. This was full off the chains Mike Awesome.
This was my first experience of Mike Awesome. This was my first experience of Masato Tanaka. My mouth was on the floor the entire match.
Right. It's insane. It's Mike Awesome hitting power bombs off the top rope, off the apron to the floor, over the top rope to the floor. It's Tanaka just taking 8 million chair shots right to the head unprotected.
And honestly, I think this was my first experience to what could be the strong style.
Yeah, Masato Tanaka definitely comes from strong style, and this was very much an FMW match.
Which, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Without all of the gimmicks, this was very much an FMW match, and it was really good. This was essentially the Gladiator Mike Awesome from FMW as basically the Gladiator. So, yeah, Awesome ends up winning when he does an awesome bomb over the top rope, through a table to the floor, and then slingshots himself over the top rope and dives on Tanaka in the remains of the table.
Yeah, it was definitely something. Like I said, this was my first experience to it, and I realized what actually good wrestling could be.
Yep. And final match of the night was the Dudley Boyz defeating Tommy Dreamer and the Sandman. So, yeah, the match itself was We end with Tommy Dreamer getting power bombed through a flaming table, so that was a thing.
I mean, EC dub,
right.
EC dub.
So again, in a context of history, Dudley Boyz had been gone from WWE since about November. They hadn't been on TV for almost 6 months. They were brought in for this match, and this would be their last thing they ever did for nearly a decade.
Yeah, because after this, they jumped over to TNA,
yep.
And they became like 45-time champions in TNA alone.
Yep, and then we had the whole
this was when they
aces and eights.
Yeah, this was when they actually won the IWGP tag team titles for the first time.
Yes.
When they were in Impact.
Right, it was far from the end of the Dudleys, but...
End of the Dudleys in WWE for a good long time.
Yep, for a good long time. Let's say, what did they become? The Dudley Brothers? What were they called in Impact? Team 3D?
Team 3D.
Okay.
Which was funny because there was only two of them.
Right. It was Bubba Ray. Or was it Bully Ray?
It was
Brother Ray and Brother D-Von.
Yep. And then when Bubba split, he became Bully Ray.
Right. In which he's still using that gimmick today.
Yep.
And apparently living up to it from some shenanigans that happened recently at ROH.
Yeah, I also don't know if I believe said fan, because said fan has had quite an issue at WWE events before. So
it's sounding like well, let's get into that after this. Let's finish up the thing here. Tommy and Sandman would hang around. Tommy was actually the one behind this whole event. He was the one that kind of had the idea for it. He booked the whole thing and was basically the agent for every match.
yeah.
So props to Tommy. After the match ended, we would have... before the match, actually, Paul Heyman came out and cut a promo against WWE, which, decent promo.
Yeah. I mean, Paul's always good for
Funny
a mic
line,
spot.
funny quote-unquote shoot line being him addressing JBL, saying the only reason you were ever champion on SmackDown is because Hunter didn't want to work Tuesdays.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Right. So... we end with the whole ECW locker room coming out and cheering together. And then Stone Cold comes out and calls out the anti-ECW Crusaders, as they were being called. We have a brawl in the ring. This was the infamous moment where JBL legitimately cracked Blue Meanie in the head.
Yeah.
For no effing reason.
And just decided to start throwing haymakers.
Yup.
And ECW cleans house, obviously, because it's their pay-per-view.
Yep. ECW ends standing tall. They drag Eric Bischoff into the ring. Says, hey, what do you think of that now? Says, fuck ECW. Stone Cold hits him with a stunner, and we all go home happy.
Well, and then literally every major name from WWE who was on this pay-per-view hit Bischoff with their finishers.
That was beforehand.
Yeah.
When they say, what do you think of ECW now? When he was laying on the ground after all of the finishers, he says, fuck ECW. Stone tells him to pick him up and hits him with a stunner. And then we go home.
Yeah.
So,
not an awful pay-per-view by any means.
Not awful. Once the WWF stuff or WWE stuff started up, it definitely went down in quality. But that awesome Tanaka match,
if they had not done anything else with ECW after this would have been... It removed the WWE stuff. This would have been the perfect swan song for ECW.
Yes. As we know, that was not the case.
Yep, and we got
a year later, we would have a second one-night stand.
Which then launched into WWE ECW.
Yep, which at the time, I was jazzed for. In retrospect, I was an idiot.
I was the exact same way. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and then it happened, and I was like,
oh this
no.
is bad.
Oh, no.
Oh, honey, no. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was ECW One Night Stand. So, yeah, going back to Bubba Ray here for a second. There was apparently an event at ROH a couple weekends ago now.
Yeah.
Where a fan alleges a bunch of things, and ROH alleges... Basically, this fan alleges that he was booing the heels, being females at the moment, and he was later called backstage and dressed down by Bully Ray. Fan says one thing, ROH says another thing, Bubba Ray comes out on Twitter and says yet a slightly different thing. Whether you believe Bubba, whether you believe Ring of Honor, whether you believe the fan... The way it was handled, which was a quote-unquote security guy, who's apparently actually like a producer for ROH, comes and gets a fan out of the stands and pulls him backstage where a wrestler kind of corners him and reads him the Riot Act.
Yeah.
Whether or not you think anyone didn't deserve it, that's a real bad way of handling things.
It's a bad look for sure for ROH and for Bully Ray.
Right. If you have a problematic fan, you should have security in place that can deal with this fan and can deal with any fan that's not acting in a way that an audience member should be acting.
Yeah.
You don't have talent take them privately to somewhere where no one else is really sure of what's going on and have your talent...
It's not like there's a security guard there or somebody from management for ROH.
Right.
Anything could have happened backstage with
Exactly.
something like that.
We now literally have a he said situation where we don't really know because this was done in a very private, secretive manner instead of a calm, organized, rational, systemic way, which would have transparency and, hey, look, we followed our procedures, then we ejected. Like, you can't just Rambo your way through life,
right,
and yank someone aside and threaten them because, hey, your character is Bully Ray. You're an asshole to people. Why wouldn't I believe this about you at this point?
Exactly. The part that, again, regardless of if I believe Bully Ray or the fan, looking back at some of the stuff that the fan has had on his Twitter and reports of said fan, he's been like this multiple places.
This guy's probably your annoying, smart wrestling fan.
Yeah, and the one who makes some pretty offhanded comments to different talent.
Oh, yeah, he probably tries to make smart inside remarks, and we've seen them at local independent wrestling shows. It's just, it gets tiresome and annoying, and yeah, this guy's probably a douchebag, and he's probably playing up how innocent he is, but no one's denying that he was pulled aside backstage.
Right.
Which, again, whether he deserved to be ejected from the venue or anything else, like, if his behavior's that problematic, eject his ass. Like, have security be like, hey, this is your one warning. You need to behave more appropriately or you're gone.
Right.
And then just eject the guy. You can't pull someone backstage where there's no supervision and have one of your talents threaten the guy, yell at the guy,
whatever
calmly speak to the guy. Yeah, exactly. Because now we can't prove what happened. You can't prove what happened, and why wouldn't... Like, we don't have any reason to believe either side over the other, but we do have reason to go, hey, this was really handled poorly, so I kind of believe the fan that at least this wasn't handled correctly.
Right. I've mixed feelings on it. Don't be an asshole, but Bully Ray, don't be an asshole.
Right. I'm not defending any douchey behavior in the crowd because, I mean, we've done it before too, but looking back, all right, maybe that probably wasn't the right thing to do.
Maybe we should have toned it down a bit.
Right. Maybe we should have picked our path on what we were doing a little bit better. Anyways, behavior of the fan aside, it wasn't handled properly, and we know that wasn't handled properly.
Yeah.
So, going by the only things we know for sure, for whatever reason, the talent and this fan were not on the same page, and then this was not handled properly.
Definitely.
Whose fault it was for not being on the same page? Don't know. Easily could have been the fans' fault.
Yeah.
But it still just wasn't handled properly. We know that. Not a good look. All right, that's probably way more coverage than that incident deserves.
Definitely.
Anything else going on with the current product we want to talk about?
Not really. I mean,
It's not doing well.
no.
I don't know what's going on, but it's not good, and something needs to change sooner rather than later.
And if it doesn't change, WWE is going to have some pretty heavy issues coming soon.
Right. Where we are by the end of the year is going to be very, very interesting. So the next 6 months, I'd say until the end of November, because after Survivor Series, the month of December is usually kind of a month while we float in limbo waiting for a Rumble. So let's say Survivor Series. We need something major with this company to come around and show signs of righting the ship before then.
And I wouldn't even say it has anything to do with the talent themselves.
No, they if anything, they have an overabundance of talent right now.
Their writers need to start. I wouldn't even say it's the writers.
Nope.
The booking needs to start getting fixed.
It really seems like the captain of the ship needs to kind of correct things, because it's really weird. If you point to any individual thing, it's really kind of tough to say, yeah, this isn't good. We're doing things wrong here. I mean, there's a few things that we can point to, but overall, things just feel wrong, and it doesn't feel like there's no confidence right now in the company.
No. I have zero confidence that they can put on a pay-per-view that's even remotely on the level of Double or Nothing.
Right. So,
aside from an NXT takeover.
Let's exclude NXT, because that's usually kind of the flying under the radar, always solid thing. We've been shown time after time after time, all of this NXT talent that gets called up never really gets their full chance. That's kind of the biggest strike here that I think a lot of fans are upset about. And then we have storylines that just kind of don't really do much. They're kind of just rehashes of the same thing over and over and over. And some of that does have to do with the not using NXT talent properly.
The biggest thing at this point to me is that there's no stories at all.
There's no main guy.
Even if there was a main guy, it's just going to be the main guy versus another main guy, and there's no reason for what's happening.
But so, I mean, that's not nothing. That's all AEW has is big guy versus big guy right now. I mean, that's all Kenny versus Jericho was.
But the fans knew of the history that they had previously.
Right, so we can create that. So let's not worry about main guy versus main guy, because I don't know if there's any other real main storyline of...
No. I'm saying that it's more of a wrestler... Create a wrestler generic guy A is
right,
going
no
against
personalities.
Generic create a wrestler B, and not having... Why do they not like each other?
Right.
Why does one guy want the belt?
Right, other than I want the belt to be the best.
Right.
Fair. So that's where the complaints online about the 50-50 booking of this guy wins, then he loses, then this guy wins, then he loses. No one feels like a main guy right now.
No, because everything is 50-50. It's all even throughout everything.
The last thing that we had was close to a main guy was Roman, when he was getting shoved down our throats and everyone hated it. And they couldn't even do the right thing of, cool, turn him heel then.
Right.
Like they come out with these snarky, well, if you look who's getting booed, I would say he already is a heel. No, that's not how you're presenting him, though. We all know that's not what you're doing.
And even Seth right now.
Right. Like, he doesn't feel like he doesn't feel like he's being highlighted. He opened the damn show.
Because he's being overshadowed by everything with Brock.
Yeah.
Because anytime Brock shows up, it takes away from everything else.
Right. They need to let him... They've done nothing that makes him feel like he's the chosen one.
Right.
Like, you don't necessarily need to even have, like, the figurehead of the companies be behind the guy. You just need to, like, give him all the video packages. Give him these, like... They just don't make him feel like he's really the champ.
No, because he's... At this point, he's doing nothing but ducking and running and trying to barely survive against Brock.
Yeah, it doesn't...
Like Chuck said the other day, the fact that the only vanilla babyface champion in the company, aside from Kofi, has to win by punching another guy in the dick and using chairs... Come on.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like a strong champion. It doesn't feel like... He doesn't feel like what a baby... You don't necessarily need to be the by-the-book babyface, but you'd need to feel like you're not afraid of everyone, like that you're going to take this challenge on.
Exactly.
Like, we should have him being like, I beat Brock for the title once. Sure. Come at me at my weakest. I'll still beat you. Like, yeah, I'm scared, but I'm willing to have the fight.
Exactly.
Like, instead of him punching Brock in the dick and hitting him with a chair a bunch and then stomping him onto the briefcase, actually let him cash in and have the fight.
Yeah. Have the exact same thing happen, but while he's cashed in.
Right. Like they're not booking anyone to feel strong ever because they're afraid of making another John Cena that's just going to go off to Hollywood again.
Yeah.
Just like The Rock did.
Yeah.
They're afraid of making another Hollywood star.
Which I'm not saying Roman's going to be the next one, but he's already starting to be in movies.
I'm about to say he was in Rock's movie, and that's kind of how Rock's career started, and it's kind of how John Cena's career started, was
Little cameos here and there, and then
little side roles, yep. But I don't know. They need to fix something, so
for sure.
Name 3 things the WWE could do in the next 5 months that would make you happy. It doesn't need to be like, all right, I'm fully back into things. I'm the happiest with WWE I've ever been. What 3 things would you like to see out of them in the next 5 months?
First one is start using the NXT talent a little bit better. Doesn't even have to be a whole lot better. A little bit better.
Pick one specific guy, one specific thing to do with him.
Drew McIntyre.
Okay.
Give me him as either Intercontinental Champ or number 1 contender for one of the other belts.
He's on Raw, so it'd be U.S. title, but yes.
Okay, so U.S. title or give me Seth versus Drew.
Okay.
Get him away from Shane, essentially is what I'm saying.
Yes. I will use that as my side number 1. Get Drew away from everyone. They keep putting him in all these awful, awful contingents.
Yep.
And they're all awful. Stop.
Second one would be start making they're doing a decent job with it right now with the IC belt feeling relatively important. Make the US belt feel important.
Yeah, but say Ray just gave the thing up. It does not really feel important. So,
like, to me, there was nothing. I have to go back to him. In the early 2000s, there was nothing more fun than watching the Booker T. Chris Benoit best of 7 for the US belt.
Yeah.
Give me something like that with the U.S. belt. Make it feel important.
I'm about to say, they had Cena doing the U.S. Open Challenge, so.
Yeah. Even have Joe do it. Have
Yeah.
Joe do it and just squash people left and right.
There you
go. Tag team wrestling. Feel like that's all I need to say.
Yeah. So, all right.
Those 3 things for me.
All right. I kind of said one already with the tagging onto the Drew Mac thing. I fully agree. We make Drew a monster. We need some real heels again, oddly enough. The heels we have on Raw kind of suck because right now it's Brock that's not there.
And Drew looks like a heel.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have to try and he looks like a heel.
Yeah, let him just be let him be the real monster on Raw. Let him take the Brock role.
Because if he's taking the Brock role, he's going to be there more often to do the stuff that Brock shows up once a month to do.
Right. I really want to see Drew claymoring people in the backstage through like walls. I think it'd be amazing. Tell me it would not be a hell of a sight to see someone get claymore kicked into like some drywall and leave like an impression of their body in it. Like that would be a great visual, I think.
Yeah. Especially if it's somebody that's like a contender to a title.
Right. Or the champ.
Yeah.
Like I think that'd be a cool scene.
Seth's doing an interview with his hurt back, gets beat up by Drew, and then Drew just claymores him.
Yeah. Number 2, Bray Wyatt. Make him something.
Give me all of the Bray Wyatt.
Don't overexpose him in the ring. Keep this Firefly Funhouse thing going. Have him occasionally show up. Do something just disturbing in the ring to someone. And then back to happy something. Like, what he's doing right now, especially on Twitter, as far as like the 24/7 thing going, he was taunting R-Truth the other day. Saying like, hey, if you need a place to hide, my door's always open. He's like, ooh. It's just these little creepy things. Like, I really want him to be around and be maybe start having him interact backstage where inviting people to the fun house, just something to make it, let's step up the creepiness.
Yeah.
Keep it creepy and just make this whole secondary thing start happening where he's getting involved in people and just more with that, but keep it creepy and don't just feed him to someone because that's what they always end up doing with Bray is they just feed him to someone in some dumb feud.
Yeah. If you're not going to have Drew be a monster, make Bray a monster.
Right.
But only sometimes.
Right. And finally, SmackDown needs something more. Like it too needs a heel. We don't have DB as our heel there anymore. We need a big evil person on SmackDown. We need someone to cheer against. We need someone to root for our heroes to without a good heel, we don't have anyone good to cheer against that heel.
Yeah.
Give me a larger than life villain that we just hate. Because no one I hate anymore. Even Brock, like we don't hate anyone for the right reasons. Brock, we're all like, yeah, we're annoyed at him not being around. We still like kind of pop when he comes in and absolutely annihilates someone in 30 seconds.
Right.
There's no one that we just hate having around. I mean, oddly enough, Baron Corbin's kind of almost the closest thing, but he's poop. So
yeah, I mean,
give me someone that's not poop.
You don't have an Edge style heel
right
running around anymore, because I loved Edge. He was one of my favorite wrestlers.
Straight Edge Society Punk.
Right. But it was one of those that you enjoyed watching the show just to hate that guy.
Right. Give me someone that's present and makes me hate him for non-wrestling related reasons. Give me like wrestling reasons to dislike someone. Give me a coherent storyline about why this person is awful. Not just, fuck, it's Shane again and he's Vince's son. I'm just done seeing this.
Yeah.
Give me someone I want to see but hate seeing. Actually, if that makes sense.
Actually, I would think the next closest one would be Randy at this point. But he flops back and forth between face, heel, and tweener more than Big Show does.
Right. All right. I think that about wraps it up for us. You got anything else before we go?
No.
All right.
Good.
We're history.